The doctors said I had no awareness left. My family agreed. They were all wrong, and that agreement was the most expensive mistake any of them will ever make. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Robert Calloway. I'm 63 years old. I live in Paradise Valley, Arizona, in a neighborhood called Clearwater Ridge, where the houses sit up on the hillside and you can see the lights of Scottsdale stretching out below you like somebody knocked over a jar of fireflies. I built a structural engineering consultancy called Calloway Meridian Group out of a one-room office on Scottsdale Road back in 1994 with a used drafting table and a second-hand laptop. By 2025, we had 31 employees, contracts on 8 commercial developments across the Southwest, and a pending firm sale to a Phoenix-based infrastructure group for $4.2 million. The paperwork was almost final. 2 signatures away from done. I say almost. My wife, Diane, 59, had been with me for 29 years. My son, Nate, 31, worked loosely in what I called business development, which mostly meant he attended site meetings, collected a salary, and drove a truck the company leased. My daughter, Brooke, 27, ran a home decor boutique in Tempe called Wren and Sage. I had quietly funded it twice. She didn't know that I knew how quietly. And then there was Marcus Webb, 49, Diane's younger brother. I had hired him as CFO 8 years ago because family helps family, and because for the first 6 years, Marcus was genuinely good at the job. I trusted him with the company's accounts the way you trust someone who's sat across your dinner table for 3 decades. That kind of trust. The kind that doesn't ask questions because it thinks it doesn't need to. We'll come back to all of them. It was a Saturday morning in early March. The kind of morning that reminds you why people move to Arizona, when the desert air is still cool enough to breathe before the sun gets serious about it. I was hiking Camelback Mountain. The Echo Canyon Trail, the harder one, the one I'd done maybe 200 times. I know every switchback by feel. I was 3/4 up when my left arm went strange. Not painful at first, just absent, like someone had unplugged it. Then the right side of my face. Then the ground came up to meet me and I couldn't understand why. I don't remember anything else for a long time after that. The paramedics said a couple hiking behind me found me face down on the trail roughly 40 minutes later. Airlifted to Honor Health Scottsdale. Hemorrhagic stroke. Left hemisphere. The attending physician, a neurologist named Dr. Priya Anand, told my family I had sustained significant brain injury and was showing no voluntary response. She said the next 72 hours would determine a great deal. They determined everything. Here is what nobody tells you about locked-in syndrome. The movies get it wrong. They show the person lying there like they've left the building, like consciousness is just the lights being on or off. But I was in that bed, fully present, behind eyes that wouldn't open on command, behind a body that had decided to stop taking calls. I could hear the ventilator cycling. I could hear the nurse's shoes on the floor. I could hear my family talking about me like I was already a thing that had happened, rather than a person who was still happening. Day 2. Diane arrived with Marcus and Nate. I heard them settle into the chairs around me. The chair legs scraped. Someone set a coffee cup down on the little rolling tray table. Diane spoke to the duty nurse first, asked questions in a practiced, reasonable voice. The voice she used in situations where she needed people to think she was calm. She was good at it. I had always admired that about her. The nurse left. The door clicked shut. Then Marcus said, "We need to talk about the sale." Diane said, "Not here. We're not going to get a better moment," Marcus said. Priya said, "There's no awareness. He can't hear us. And we need to decide before the acquisition team starts asking questions." I felt something cold move through me that had nothing to do with the hospital room. "The signing authority," Marcus continued. "The sale can't finalize without his signature or a legal instrument replacing it. If we pursue a mental incapacity designation." "Marcus, I'm just laying it out. Then lay it out somewhere else." "Diane," his voice got quieter, more deliberate. $4.2 million, 2 signatures away. If this drags into probate or gets tied up in capacity hearings, we lose the acquisition window. Mercer Infrastructure has a deadline. If we miss that deadline, the deal dies. And if the deal dies, I know what happens if the deal dies. Then we need to act while we have legal standing to move. Nate said nothing during any of this, but he also didn't walk out. I lay there and I thought about the drafting table on Scottsdale Road. I thought about 1,994. I thought about pouring concrete in August heat because I couldn't afford to hire it out and the foundation had to go in. I thought about the year we almost lost everything when a project in Mesa went sideways, and I worked 7 days a week for 14 months to claw us back. I thought about all of it, and I kept my breathing even, and I listened. Over the next 4 days, I heard the whole shape of it. Marcus had contacted a physician whose name I didn't recognize, someone who was apparently willing to provide a secondary opinion supporting mental incapacity. The plan was to get that designation filed with the court, which would transfer temporary financial authority to Marcus as CFO, while Diane petitioned for guardianship. Marcus would then execute the sale. The $4.2 million would pass through Calloway Meridian's operating accounts, which Marcus controlled. Before it reached the personal distribution accounts, where it was supposed to land, a significant portion would reroute through a holding company Marcus had apparently set up in Nevada 18 months ago. I heard him explain this to Diane in a low, efficient voice on day 4 while I lay 8 feet away from them, not moving a single muscle. I also heard Nate, the following morning, on the phone with someone outside my door, close enough that his voice came through clearly. "Yeah," Marcus said, "if Mom gets guardianship locked in before the end of the month, he can move the sale through. Brooke and I each get $800 off the top before it clears the estate. We just have to sign the capacity affidavits." My son, my 3-1-year-old son, signing affidavits that his father had no awareness left, for $800,000. I want to be honest with you, friend, because I think that's the only way this story means anything. In that moment, I didn't feel rage. I felt something quieter and more permanent than rage. I felt a door close inside me, a door I hadn't even known was open. And on the other side of it, very clearly, I felt myself begin to plan. Dr. Priya Anand came to see me alone on day 5. She was thorough in a way the others hadn't been. She sat at my bedside and she talked to me, not at me. The way you talk to someone you're not sure can't hear you. She ran assessments. She shone a light in my eyes and watched how they tracked. She asked me to try to follow her finger and sat there long enough, patient enough, that I was able to do it. Barely, but enough. She didn't say anything in the room. She just wrote something in her chart and left. 2 hours later, she came back with a colleague. They ran the assessment again. This time, when she leaned close and asked me to blink twice if I understood what she was saying, I blinked twice. Dr. Anand sat back and looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Calloway," she said quietly, "I'm going to get you out of here." The next 72 hours, I've been told, were interesting from the outside. Dr. Anand flagged the secondary physician's assessment as premature and clinically unsupported. She requested that all capacity proceedings be paused pending her own formal evaluation, which she was legally entitled to do. She also quietly contacted the patient advocate on staff, a woman named Gloria Torres, who had 30 years of experience with exactly the kind of situation that was developing. What my family didn't know was that by day 6, I had communicated enough through eye movement and eventually some limited hand response that Gloria had contacted my personal attorney, a man named Dennis Hare, who had done my estate planning for 14 years and kept an office in Old Town Scottsdale off Craftsman Court. Dennis arrived on day 7 under the guise of a routine patient welfare check. He came alone. He sat by my bed, asked the nursing staff to give him a few minutes, and then asked me a series of yes or no questions that I answered with eye blinks and the 2 fingers on my right hand that had started responding. I told him everything I'd heard. Dennis didn't show it on his face. He was the kind of lawyer who had learned a long time ago that whatever you're feeling, the face stays level. He made notes. He said, "I'm going to need to make some calls." He left the folder on the chair beside me, cover side down, and walked out. The first call he made was to the Arizona Attorney General's Financial Crimes Division. The second was to an independent forensic accountant named Ruth Winslow, who, within 4 days, had identified the Nevada holding company, its registration date 18 months prior, and 6 internal transfers from Calloway Meridian accounts to that entity going back 14 months. 6 transfers. While Marcus was sitting at my CFO desk, shaking hands with my employees at the Christmas party, eating Thanksgiving dinner at my house. 14 months. The third call Dennis made was to the Mercer Infrastructure Acquisition team directly, to inform them that Robert Calloway was competent, that all capacity proceedings were being contested, and that he should expect to hear from me personally before any transaction moved forward. I came home on day 19. I want to be clear, I was not recovered. My left side was weak. I walked with a cane for the first 3 weeks. I had speech therapy twice a week. I tired quickly and I knew it. But I was cognitively sharp, I was legally competent, and I was home. When Diane met me at the front door of our house on Clearwater Ridge, her face did something I've been trying to parse ever since. There was relief in it. I want to be fair. There was genuine relief. She held me, and I felt her shake a little. And then, underneath that, something else. A recalibration. She was working out, in real time, what my being home meant for things that had been in motion. I held her back. I said, "I'm so glad to be home." Every word was the truth, just not in the way she understood it. The weeks that followed, I played the part of a man who was grateful and tired and not quite himself yet. I moved slowly on purpose. I left rooms when conversations got complicated. I let Marcus run the Monday check-ins at Calloway Meridian without pushback. I let Nate tell me not to worry about the acquisition timeline, that Marcus had it handled. I smiled and nodded and went to bed early, and lay awake running logistics until 2 in the morning. Ruth Winslow finished her full forensic audit in week 3. The total amount Marcus had redirected through the Nevada entity over 14 months was $640,000. Not from the sale proceeds, those hadn't moved yet, but from operating accounts, from vendor overpayments, from a project contingency fund that was supposed to cover cost overruns on a development in Chandler, $640,000. While I was paying him a CFO salary, while I was defending his work in a meeting once, when one of my project managers questioned his numbers and I said, "Marcus has been here 8 years, give him the benefit of the doubt." Dennis called me the Thursday before Easter. "Ruth's report is done. The AG's office has what they need. I've spoken to Mercer Infrastructure. They're prepared to re-execute the sale on your terms, your signature only, with Marcus removed from the transaction entirely. The new paperwork can be ready by Monday." He paused. Robert, when do you want to move?" I had been thinking about that for 2 weeks. Diane had already planned an Easter dinner. She'd invited Nate and Brooke, and Marcus and his wife, Ellen, who I genuinely liked and who I was fairly certain knew nothing about any of this. She'd ordered a honey-glazed ham from a place on Scottsdale Road we'd been ordering from for 15 years. She'd set the table with the good dishes, the ones her mother had left her. She'd put tulips in the low glass vase she kept for special occasions. "Monday morning," I said. After dinner. When I walked into that Easter dinner, I was walking better than they expected. I had worked for it. The physical therapy was real and I had pushed it, because I needed to be standing straight when the moment came. I sat at the head of my own table. I watched Nate pour wine and joke about the suns. I watched Brooke describe something she was doing with the boutique's spring display. I watched Marcus cut his ham and ask me about my recovery with an expression of practiced concern. "You're looking better every week," Marcus said. "I feel better every week," I said. "I actually feel clearer than I have in years." He smiled. He had no idea how true that was. After dinner, after the plates were cleared and Ellen had put on coffee, I asked everyone to stay at the table for a moment. I said I had something I wanted to share. Diane looked at me across the table with a careful smile. "Surviving something like what I went through," I started, "changes the way you see things. You hear differently. You pay attention to things you used to let slide." I kept my voice even and quiet. "I want to tell you all what I heard while I was in that hospital bed." The table got very still. I looked at Marcus first. I heard you explain to my wife how a mental incapacity designation would allow you to execute the firm's sale and route the proceeds through a holding company in Nevada. A company called Meridian West Partners, LLC, registered in Clark County 18 months ago. I watched his color change. I also heard about the $640,000 that's already been through that account. Ruth Winslow documented every transfer. The Attorney General's office has had her report since Thursday morning. Marcus said my name, just once, like it was a question. I turned to Diane. I heard you, too, I said. Not just in the hospital. I heard you tell Marcus to move carefully. I heard you say nothing when Nate talked about the affidavits. I heard the calculation in your voice, Diane. 30 years, and I heard it clearly. She opened her mouth. She closed it. Dennis had prepared a single envelope for her. I slid it across the table. Inside were 2 documents. The first was an accounting of the transactions she had knowingly approved through her guardianship petition, which constituted knowing participation in the fraud under Arizona statute. The second was a divorce petition, already filed. The house, I said, was purchased with distributions from Calloway Meridian. The forensic audit establishes that clearly. Dennis has filed a motion to classify it as a business asset. If you'd like to discuss what you're entitled to in a settlement, that conversation goes through him. Diane put both hands flat on the table. She looked at the tulips in the vase. She said nothing for a long time. Brooke started to say, "Dad, I know about the affidavits," I said. "I know what $800,000 was worth to you." I looked at her for a moment. The little girl who used to fall asleep in my truck on the way home from the hardware store on Saturday mornings. I looked at her, and I felt the weight of all those Saturdays, and I kept my voice level. I co-signed your business loan at Wren and Sage. That ends. The lease agreement on your storage unit that runs through the company, that ends Monday. You'll need to make other arrangements. Brooke's eyes went red. She did not speak. I looked at Nate. The affidavit you signed said, I showed no awareness and was incapable of understanding my own affairs. I let that sit for a moment. I was aware of every single thing that was said in that room. The truck comes back Monday morning. Your employment at Calloway Meridian is terminated effective today. I had Dennis prepare a letter. It's in the car. You'll want to read it before you drive home. Nate put down his wine glass. He stared at the table. He didn't say a word. There was a knock at the front door. I had expected it at approximately this moment. That's for Marcus, I said. I had asked Gloria Torres, my patient advocate, to make a single phone call on my behalf the previous afternoon. 2 agents from the Arizona Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit had been parked on Clearwater Ridge Drive since 6:30. They came in through the front door when I opened it, badges visible, polite, professional. One of them said, "Marcus Webb?" Marcus stood up very slowly, the way a man stands when he already knows exactly how a moment is going to end. He looked at me across the dinner table, across the good dishes and the tulips and the Easter ham and the 29 years of Sunday dinners and Christmas mornings and fishing trips I'd taken him on when he was between jobs and needed something to feel good about. "Robert," he said, "I want you to know, I never thought it would." "I know," I said. "I know you didn't think I'd wake up." He didn't have an answer for that. There wasn't one. They walked him out through the front door. Ellen sat completely still with her hands in her lap, and I told her gently that this had nothing to do with her, and that she should call her daughter in Mesa tonight, and that I was sorry she had to be here for this. She nodded. She was a decent woman. She left quietly. Diane was still sitting at the table when I came back in. She was looking at the divorce petition. 30 years, she said. Her voice was flat, not angry, emptied out. 29, I said. Our anniversary would have been June. She looked up. I spent 6 years before that building something from nothing, I said. I spent the next 23 building it bigger and bringing every person in this family along for it. I put Brooks' boutique on solid ground twice. I gave Nate a salary and a title he didn't earn because I thought one day he'd grow into it. I gave Marcus a career when he had nothing because you asked me to, and because I trusted what you said about him. I paused. While I was lying in that hospital room not moving, all of that looked to you like an opportunity. That's the part I'm going to have to spend a long time making peace with. Diane didn't respond. She picked up the envelope and held it with both hands, and her face went through something private that I decided not to try to read. Some things belong to the people going through them. I went to my office, the small one off the main hall where I kept my drafting work, and I signed the amended sale agreement that Dennis had messengered over Friday afternoon. My signature, my name, Robert T. Calloway, exactly as it had appeared on every document going back to the original Calloway Meridian founding papers in 1994, 31 years. My hand was a little unsteady from the stroke recovery. I steadied it. The signature was clean. I picked the pen myself. The sale closed 11 days later. The $4.2 million landed in a personal account in my name, only at a bank Diane had never heard of, because I had opened it in February, the morning before the Camelback hike, purely by coincidence. Some things work out the way they work out. I'm in Sedona now. I bought a small house on the edge of the Red Rocks with a back porch that faces west, and in the evenings the light turns everything the color of a fire that knows what it's doing. I have a physical therapist who comes twice a week. I've been walking without the cane for about 6 weeks. My speech is fully back. Dr. Anand calls to check in every few weeks. Last time we talked, she told me the follow-through I had shown in communicating those first days was, clinically speaking, remarkable. I told her the credit was entirely hers. I'm 63 years old. I have a company I sold at the right price. I have a foundation in my mother's name that I am currently funding. And I have, for the first time in a very long time, not a single person in my life who isn't there because they genuinely want to be. They thought I had no awareness left. As it turned out, I had never been more aware of anything in my life. Go ahead and hit like if you've been listening. Subscribe if you want to hear what comes next. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read everyone. I will see you on the next one. No matter how still the world thinks you are, something inside you keeps building. Robert didn't survive because he was lucky. He survived because decades of quiet, disciplined work had made him someone who knew how to wait, how to watch, and how to move at exactly the right moment. The real wealth he protected wasn't the $4 million. It was knowing without any doubt that he had shown up fully for the life he built.